You probably could retire, couldn't you?
Less than 2 years.
Well, let's look. When I saw that the school superintendent said he was retiring, I'm like, well, he can't be no more. What is he, about 50 years old or so? And like open this thing and rock on, cause yeah. Y'all want to go ahead and get started? Mr. Rogers, it's 5 o'clock, buddy.
Welcome to 2022, members of the board. With your permission, I'll get started on this workshop. For Mr. Wade's benefit, in a workshop, the rules are relaxed. You can just jump right in anywhere. You don't need to address your remarks to the chair. And we can call people up to answer questions. It's very relaxed. So what I'd like to do is we have 2 items of business to cover. One is which nonprofits you want to contribute to, and the other is the prioritization of the capital improvement plan, the 5-year improvement plan. If we could please start with the nonprofit listing. You've seen that we've broken it out into 3 categories: those that are mandated. We have a legal relationship with those entities. Those for which we have an MOU or a contract with to provide services to the community, and then all else are listed as discretionary. So you can also see what we've paid in the past to each of these entities. What they've requested is in the penultimate column, the second to the last column, and then what I recommend that you pay in the far right column. So I open the floor up to anyone's thoughts on what needs to be changed in this listing.
So, Mr. Rogers, I just had a few questions. Down on, and I guess we don't get the benefit of seeing maybe the justifications that people put forth, right?
Well, you could have. That's why we sent it to you.
Well, that's fine. I just.
Yeah, they're rather thick. They send their financials, and it's a lot.
Yeah. So on Lynchburg Area Center, I guess that's for independent living. They requested 5,000. You recommend 1,250, which is consistent with what we've done in the past. Any more background on why they needed the additional money, or they were just asking for it? I know our population is getting more elderly.
I'll be honest, that one came in today, so
Oh.
I have not had time to really read it.
Okay. The next question I had was on neighbors helping neighbors. I think we've given them 1,500 in the past. They requested 5,000, and you recommended 5,000. What was the justification for the increase?
Only that they are they're an Amherst-born charity, and I'm familiar with their operation, and it serves needy people. I don't know that the board wants to get into welfare. That's the function of DSS. I know they need the help. I guess I was feeling generous with your money.
I guess what struck me is usually, you go down the list and,
Right.
you're like, no, 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 and then that one. Then the contribution to the Soil Conservation District, is that an increase in staff costs? Or,
As I understand it, yes.
and Legal Aid Society, is that,
That's just them asking for more.
and you were generous that day too?
Well, they asked for 5, and I gave 5.
I think last year we did 25. Okay. That's really all I had.
And I have no dog in the fight. You could wipe it all out. I'm not. I think we only started paying legal aid 2 or 3 years ago. Well, you can see here, 2 years ago. That was at the request of Ms. Tucker, who thought that we needed to help the people in the county fight their fights, and so we started.
And mostly these are tenant landowner fights
Yes, they are.
for people who can't afford a lawyer and are getting kicked out and treated badly.
Right.
I don't have a problem funding it. I just want to know why the increases.
They did send a breakdown based on locality. I can get that for you if you'd like.
Yeah, and that 2,500, they asked for more than
Sure, that doesn't
2,500.
go
That's
very
all they
far.
got. Yeah.
I have a question. What about the softball, baseball, the Dixie, all that kind of stuff?
My reason for 0 is I don't think that we should use taxpayer money for that purpose. I understand that our Parks and Rec Department provides a basketball program and a soccer program. We do not provide football and baseball, and those nonprofits that do that, one could say they are providing a governmental service or quasi-governmental service, and I'm in that sense. When it comes to sports, that's certainly a need of children, but I don't think it's as strong a need as the other who are people who are actually suffering, and so I zero those out. We also, if I can remind the board, the way your current ARPA plan stands, you've set aside $50,000 for a grant program for youth sports. Now, that'll be managed by the EDA, like our other grant program, and they'll all have to apply for a piece of that $50,000. If you total these 4 up, that only comes to $30,000. So you've already set aside more money than this for them.
This is only 3 of the 5, just so you know.
Okay. And then as you've mentioned in the past, Mr. Martin, I think what we're supposed to be doing is looking in the future years towards setting up a set dollar amount and then a system whereby people would come and so you would set the limit of what you're going to give. And when it came to youth sports, we would ask the Parks and Rec board to provide a recommendation as to which youth sports should get funding and how much.
Yeah.
Now, we don't need that this year because we have the ARPA money, but for next year, we would take a year to set that up and get that going.
Yeah, Ms. Tucker, that's the way I remembered it, is that because of the ARPA funding, that's why it's not shown here. I think next budget year, we probably should strongly consider setting aside funding for the sports. But Mr. Rogers, you said pass through the EDA. My understanding was that it was going through the Parks and Rec Board.
No, the grant program is managed by the EDA. So they managed our prior ARPA and CRF grants, and they're set up for that. But once that grant money's been awarded, that's the end of that. So that having been done and paid out, now we, the county, want to set up a process to consider youth sports, and we'll do that on our own. And we'll figure out how you all want to do it, and I presume you're going to want a recommendation from the Parks and Rec Board on which youth sports ought to be funded and by how much. So they're completely separate.
Yeah, I guess I would hope that then the EDA would consult with the Parks and Rec Department. And
We won't use. I don't think we'll use the EDA. This will be internal.
You're talking about the ARPA money, right?
Right.
Oh.
And we have to use the EDA
Right.
for that, but
That's
we will,
fine.
we've done, I stay on the group, and then we get, it would behoove us to reach out to the Parks Board and have them part of that group that decides where that money, how much
So the
money.
EDA is the conduit for
Yes.
the ARPA money. Ms. Tucker, I guess what I'm saying is that this could kind of be like a preliminary phase of what we would move to possibly. I guess I would envision setting the money aside as a line item in the Parks and Rec budget, a certain amount where these sports groups would come to the Parks and Rec Board and ask for it to be distributed that way. But if we did it, if we went ahead and put additional funding in this, then it would be almost doubling what they had the potential to get this year.
I think we as a board have just got to decide that we think that these groups are important. I personally do.
Oh, I agree.
And I think that we need to have a methodology in place to make sure that we're showing them our financial commitment in a way that they can count on it, not wonder from year to year.
I agree.
Folks, we have to be mindful when we go to these ball fields and look what's been built through the years, through volunteer efforts and or fundraising of these organizations. We ourselves know what the volunteer pool is now. It is very, very little. I mean, look at us on the EMS side, what we've had to encounter over the last several years. So I think that's one of the big things that our programs are struggling with. They don't have the volunteers, and the donations are not what they used to be. So if the county looked at ourselves and what would it have cost us through the years to build these facilities, to take care of these kids in our county, and I think they've done it. These folks have done a great job. We need to be mindful of that and make sure that these programs are, whether it's through Parks and Rec or however, we need to help these folks, because I know in the last, since COVID hit, they have been struggling. And I know the ARPA money is hopefully going to pull them over the hurdle that they're sitting behind now because of the inability to play ball and do what they normally do. But I do think we need to, as Claudia said, put in a financial plan that they know and can budget themselves, knowing what the localities will be able to do to help them.
So, I'm sorry, I guess, if the board wished, we could always go ahead and put it here, and then at the next meeting, we're talking about the ARPA funding, we could allocate that to something else. It's just a matter of what pot you want to take it from this year. Probably because we have the ARPA funds available.
Is there an advantage of one
We
over
have
the
to
other?
use EDA.
Well,
I think they're getting ready to tell us.
Oh.
Let me
one is free money
just
from the
share
government.
this with you. Our guidelines for the nonprofits right now require them to submit financial information, and only one of these three has done so right now, and I'm not sure they're gonna have that ability right at the moment. I'm just scared that they're not gonna have something to substantiate a good, not that it's not a good use of the funds, but to back up that you made a donation or contribution to their program. That is part of your nonprofit application, is that they have to give us financial information.
Do they not have to do that for the ARPA funds?
Well, they probably will. Yeah, we just haven't gotten that far yet. So, I have not received. One of them has produced it for the Back in Business grant.
Do they know that they have to?
It's on the application. This
Have
was very last
have they
minute.
gotten an application?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. They were mailed out with everyone else's and then sent again.
I mean, I think it's fine if we do the ARPA this time, but I think we need to make that as part of our, whether not being this time unless we decide what it's gonna be, and it will not be part of the budget this year because of the ARPA funding, but at least they will know what we have in mind to do to help them, or what will be available to help them, for their next budget year, their budget years. They put together their projections of finances, but, you know, the ARPA funds definitely will suffice for this year, but, you know, I think we need to know that, they need to know that our commitment is with them, you know, next year is because they've been struggling. I talked to Mr. Adams this week, he called me again, so.
Well, I would like to go forward with that method, and that is leave these at zero. We have 50,000 of ARPA, and then in the next few weeks, we will bring forward to you a process. Now, you won't use it for another year because so we'll build the process on how the money will be allocated, and then we'll come back to you this time next year and say, how much do you want to set aside for youth sports?
I'm fine
And
with
then the
that.
process will already be in place and they'll all know it.
I'm fine with that. I think youth sports knows it. At least what I'm hearing is that the board supports them. I think when those numbers do come back to us, my understanding is that I think we are currently paying for lights at some of the fields. Mm-hmm. We need to know all of those amounts so that we know how much.
Roll it all in together. Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's just my take, huh?
I'm fine with that.
I agree.
Are there any other amounts on the far right column that you would like to change?
I got a question simply because I don't know where it goes. The Ag Committee will come to the board and request money for next year's fair. Well, actually, this year's fair. Where does that money? Where do we need to make sure that money is captured?
You'll see that in the O&M budget. There's a catch-all page in there with a lot of oddball projects and things, and that's where it'll be.
Okay.
And so Stacy has to pay their invoices. So they don't have the authority to spend on their own. I mean, we spend their money,
Right.
so we keep track of it.
So make sure that we don't forget about that.
You'll see it
Okay.
in the O&M
Okay.
budget. Yes, ma'am. I think it's there
I've already met
30,000,
with Eric. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Eric and I have already come up with the amount.
which is half of what they asked for last year.
I know that.
So
Yep.
it's
They've done very well.
the number's going down as we had hoped it would.
Yeah, we hope that it will carry itself. Is the ultimate goal.
Yes, sir.
I'm fine with the numbers that you have, unless anybody else.
Nope, I'm good.
Mr. Wade?
What about the, I know I asked you this yesterday, the Southeast Rural Community Assistance?
That's an organization out of Roanoke
Oh, okay, all right.
that helps with housing.
Septic, sewer hookups.
They help
They
anybody
help
out here?
rural communities.
I have not
Right.
seen anything on their application that says they've done anything in Amherst County.
Okay, all right. Fair enough, thank you.
So we're good with this one?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, then let's look at the CIP. We got everyone's scores in, and you can see how they match up against the staff score, which ultimately just means, you know, there've been 24 people look at this and come up with about the same prioritization, which should give you some confidence that you're doing the right thing for the right reasons. You can see that there is no 4 That's because we have 2 9s, 2 10s, and 2 12s. So we need you all to distinguish as between each of those, which one is more important than the other. And we need anybody who disagrees with this ranking to convince 2 others to change the ranking.
Well, I'll start. This might be a difficult discussion to have, but I'm kind of getting into what the Parks and Rec Board talked about. But so the Parks and Rec Board is embarking on kind of trying to develop a master plan for all the parks and rec facilities in the county, right? They're starting, they're not there yet, but they've kind of got a project list. The Parks and Rec Board is pretty set that they do not think that a campground at Mill Creek is a good idea right now. So I'm just relaying that to the rest of the board members. So for me, it would be easy to move that down further.
I would be fine with that.
I won't be fine with that. Because, and I'll tell you why, when all of us met in August, we all as a group had consent on the importance of that campground. And while I respect the Park and Recs Board, I don't think that they're completely reflective of the entire community. Because I have people all the time telling me how good Mill Creek Lake looks. The people that are going out there and using it. The bike club will start with volunteer work doing a bike trail around the park. I know our public works people have put a lot of work out there as well. Anyway, something I feel strongly about. It took me 11 years to get swimming in Mill Creek Lake because of one person. And now that we finally kind of relaxed everything there, it's flourishing. It's absolutely flourishing. It's a jewel in this community, especially out there where we don't have much.
If I might make a point with the board, it would be, we would really like to have at least $20,000. We need to have the property lines surveyed out there so we know where our property is and where the private property is. So we can at least do the trail around there and know where a campground could be. I think the campground is not a one-year project. It's going to take multiple years. It'll start out with some topographical mapping. We'll use our own bulldozers and start cutting roads through there. Then at some point we got to put stone on the roads. Then we're going to have to create pads. At some point you're going to want to put wells in so that people can get drinking water out there, and ultimately a restroom and a shower. That's just to maintain fairly primitive camping, and that'll take, I think, many years. So if we just put maybe a small amount at steady increments, we can continue to advance that.
Well, I think, I'm just relaying what the Parks and Rec Board
Right,
said.
I understand.
I think there's a lot of planning and discussion that is going to be needed before we do a campground there, because you put those in, we're going to have to talk about, okay, well, how's it managed? All right, is there someone on site that stays with it? Is there a campground host? How does all of that work? Which I'm not sure we know yet. All I was inferring is that if one of those had to switch, maybe Mill Creek could go down one, because that's what you're after, right? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't take it off the list. It's just the priority.
The mic would just be moved out.
Yeah, and knowing that this is a very long-term project, all I'm saying is for this board to show good intent and show a little bit of effort. And it's not going to be $100,000, but put something into it so I can go back to those people and say, we heard you. We are planning this. It's just not going to happen in the next few years.
Well, and that's why I'm pushing for the Parks and Rec Board to do these master planning efforts on all the parks, because, as Mr. Rogers spoke, one of the main things we need up there right now, and I believe it's in the supplemental budget, is a survey of the boundary lines, right? Because we really can't go out there and start putting trails and stuff in until we know where the property lines are, and we can't really do adequate planning until we know where the property lines are.
So if what we need is a survey in order for the volunteer labor to build the bike trail, which we've all said we supported the Amherst mountain bike trail, why can't we at least allocate the money to do the survey?
Well, that's in the supplemental budget.
It's in the ARPA on the,
Oh,
we'll get to that in the next
No,
meeting.
it's in
You
the,
can't use that for that,
For lake trails, that's what the trail money was
for
for,
building it.
building the trail.
The survey,
But you
I
have to
believe, is
survey,
in the-
so know where to build.
What'd you say, Ms.
That's
Martin?
part of
Surveys in your supplemental.
the survey
It's
is in
not
the
in that number.
supplemental,
Okay.
which he sent earlier.
Okay.
So yes, I mean, I agree, we're doing things that shows we're looking to improve that area, right?
So move it down, take it off,
Move it out.
move it out a year.
I would just say above those two, you could switch the roll, keep it the way it is, roll-off truck above Mill Creek.
Wait a minute, I just lost my
Okay.
thing here. Go ahead. What'd you say, take off?
Well, we're trying to, I guess essentially what we're trying to do is to determine which is the most important out of the 2 9s, the 2 10s, and the 2 12s.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So unfortunately, I started with the 2 10s, but to me, that would, between those two, I guess the roll-off truck would be the most important, right?
Okay.
And then Rivers Edge, so really if we're gonna discuss something now, it would be Rivers Edge Phase 3B and the minibus, right? And to me, I'm just, y'all know I'll talk, so to me, the minibus replacement would be above Rivers Edge, Phase 3B.
Yeah, I could agree with that as well.
David, haven't we already applied for that grant? River's Edge? Yeah.
So if we're still going in line, we got 8, we got 2 9s. So you're saying that the minibus would be a 9 and roll-off truck would be a 10?
And then campground would become
Campground be 11.
11.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Or River Edge be 10.
River's Edge
That's
would
what,
be.
that's what,
Roll-off
Then
truck
roll-off
is
truck.
10A
Right.
Wait a minute, no.
and Mill Creek is 10B.
We still don't have a 4.
We do now.
Good point.
Okay, so of River's Edge and
The minibus.
the minibus, is the minibus going first?
Yes. That's what,
Well,
that's what
that's
Tom-
just what I said, that's not what the rest of the board said.
I need a consensus.
that's right.
I
What were you
agree
saying
with
about the
that.
grant?
We've already applied for it,
Okay.
so we'll have to make that decision.
That's
when
not
we-
the electric grant, is it?
No, this is a
That's
very
a different one.
large,
River Edge Trail.
River Edge Trail grant.
Oh, yeah.
That we'll have to make the match for if we get the grant.
Okay.
Which, I mean, if they approve the grant, I mean, it just projects it to the top of the list. Then it's time to put up the money.
Well, they have to
accept the grant.
accept the grant first,
Right.
so.
How much was the grant for?
The grant is,
2 point,
about $2 million.
yeah,
Is our match 2.4?
no, our
Oh,
match
okay.
is about
That's the whole
600.
project.
Yeah, okay, so it's not,
Our match is about 600,000.
Yeah. it's-
okay.
Now, we're still waiting on the Lee family to accept our offer on the easement. That, they said they would do that in mid-December, and I keep pinging their attorney and haven't heard back yet.
So, I mean, in essence, there's no need. If
Well,
you take it from them, it isn't like you can move forward with the project.
That is correct.
Right, so we.
But if the grant is approved, then we come to you and say, we've been offered this money, do you want to take it?
Yeah, certainly. If all we've done down there, I don't want to take River Edge Park off the list.
No, we're not taking
No,
it.
no,
Yeah,
no.
I think it,
No, you're just putting the minibus ahead of the grant.
It's,
And yeah, just.
it's
In
highly
priority.
unlikely anything above the top 4 or 5 are gonna be funded anyway, right?
So you have the minibus is 8 and the River's Edge is 9, the roll-off is 10, and Mill Creek is 11. So then you gotta figure out between the splash pad and and normally what we do, whatever we don't fund, we push out to the next year.
I would say that the parking lot expansion would probably be,
This is at Monroe, the
yeah.
community center. We're
I
just,
understand that,
would be above what?
the splash pad.
Fine with me. But the splash pad is, what do you think about the splash pad?
Oh, I think it gives the kids something to do. So I think, in my opinion, I'd leave the splash pad above the parking lot.
Above asphalt.
Yeah,
I mean, it's,
Yeah.
Parks and Rec Board would probably agree with that. Now, this is a splash pad that would go potentially at the library.
Well, it could be the library, or I suppose it could be at Central Park, Seminole Park,
The location to be determined.
But you know, we're planning Seminole Park right now, and it's not including a splash pad. So over there by the library would be, boy, everybody would see it, and it'd be a central location. You know,
And that was a recommendation by the library board.
I think that's what they wanted.
Yeah,
Yeah, they like it near the library.
yeah, I vote for the splash pad over the asphalt at Manalasan any
I'm fine
day.
either way. I just noted the 77,000 versus 200 grand. But what about, if this is part of that master plan, the Parks and Rec has to determine where the best place for the splash pad would be. Down along the river would be a kind of a cool spot as well, at River's Edge Park.
Right.
So, but it-
Right. I mean,
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind having it out at Mill Creek Lake. You know,
But you're away from
they want it more in the
They can
center
go,
of
they can
Monroe.
just go jump in the lake at Mill Creek. They don't need a splash pad.
Yeah, but it's the splashing of the water that makes it
Right.
fun. You know?
Well, let's talk.
I like the library thing because that was fought for by our library board, and I thought it was a good idea.
You know, they have those things in some of the places
Yeah,
in some of the towns I've went to before, but there's a lot of environmental monitoring on that too, for like bacteria and things like that. They'll actually close them down from time to time, so this is something to think about.
So I'm hearing you guys say splash pad above the parking lot. I'm fine with that.
That's where I've got it.
Okay,
Alright.
great.
And the rest of them have pretty much washed out to be the same order they were in, except for way out. Do you want, sorry, I can't get it all on the same screen. Do you want the public safety truck to be number 2 or the brush truck to be number 2 for year 25-26? I've got 2 3s there.
2320, I would always put a medic unit above anything else.
that's
Well,
Mark.
the
Don't
public
make me
safety
have to turn
truck
my
is a-
hearing aid gets up.
Okay.
I said I would always put a medic unit above anything else.
Okay, well that fixes that one.
Yeah, let me
The
do
rest
this.
of them are easy.
I did.
Put this. Put that upstairs.
I did hear some telephone talk about the sheriff's command center. Is there any issue with that? Nobody mentioned it, but several mentioned it to me over the phone.
I mean, I'm okay with giving one to Sam. I don't see why they can't be. If you needed it, why can't you share them? But I'll give one to Sam.
Well, his is in the ARPA funding, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Well,
question is,
I feel like if we as a county can purchase one of the ARPA funds, that's all we need to do right now.
so are you saying pull it off the
fine
list,
with
move
it.
it
I'm
down
fine.
the list,
Pull-
or push it out a few years?
Push it out a few years. That's my feeling. Board, what's y'all's pleasure?
I'm fine with that. That sounds good.
now, does this affect their recent certification at all? If they don't have it?
No.
No? Okay. All right, fair enough.
But the other one sits down there and doesn't even move most of the time.
Okay.
1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
At least 2 years.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Anything else on these lists that you want to push out?
So now, when we were talking about the medic unit and the brush truck, which year were we in?
25-26.
We were way out.
Yeah,
Right.
we were 3 more years out, so.
So Manellison engine would fall into hopefully next year.
That's where it's at right now, yes, sir.
Okay.
So where does the brush truck? What year does that end up in?
3 years from now.
Yeah, it's trying to get a plan.
26.
It's in 26.
Which is about where, that's a year late, but that's about where it should be.
What's the condition of our current brush truck?
It's like everything else. It becomes a maintenance nightmare the older it gets. It's doing the job right now. I mean, we're maintaining it.
Till it hits a tree.
Well, that's an
If
emergency.
we were to have another
purchase.
Mount Pleasant-like fire, would we be screwed if we didn't have this thing?
Well, the Department of Forestry would probably be called in as well.
Right now, we would be fine. I can't tell you what it's gonna be like in 2 years. That's why we try to plan for the 20-year replacement. Is what we can.
But I think this board has always been flexible if something were to happen.
Oh, yeah,
Major
absolutely.
with this, to bring it back up next year if it's gotten to a point that it's of our need, so.
Well, I believe that's a 2005 anyway, so it wouldn't be up for replacement until 2025.
I think we've done a
I
really
mean, I always
good job.
defer to y'all on that kind of stuff, so,
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, I think we're done. Stacy's captured everything you said. It should be on the screen in front of you.
We usually kind of decide what they're gonna do, which ones they're gonna actually do.
Okay. If you were to draw a cut line, now, I mean, the total there, all we did was move out $130,000, but you can see the total down there of all the projects, less the grants, is about $3 million. Mine's fuzzy.
3, well, it's not,
3.3.
I gotta take off the 121.
Okay.
What I will.
So what you tend to spend is about $1 million to $1.5 million each year. That's what everybody tends to feel comfortable with that. If you were to place a cut line, where would you want it to be? Where should we strive to absolutely get in the current year? How far down the list do you want us to reach? And if we can't, we won't, but you know, we will strive to reach the project that you think you've just absolutely got to have this year. And
So on the River's Edge project, you say, and if that grant were to be awarded and was accepted, we would have to come up with somewhere about 600,000?
yes, sir.
So
And
that-
and I would expect you to draw that from the unobligated general fund, but all of this comes, you know, this is all one-time money. None of this is recurring.
Let me say this, you do have, about, the last time I looked at the general fund availability, it was about 2.5 greater than it has been due to our CARES Act money.
So it's over $6 million.
It's over $6 million in there now.
Well, in the past, you've tended to hover around 4. And so you're fairly flush.
I would like to see us try and at least get the top 4, possibly top 5 done, which would put us right around the 1.5 million.
I think that's, if we can do it, that'd be great. Top 4 at least.
Anyone else have a comment?
The only thing I will say about these trucks, just so everybody knows, if a fire department, any fire department in the county today signed a contract today, that truck wouldn't be delivered for 18 months or more. So further we push it out, it really becomes 2.5, 3 years.
So regarding the Bright, so we funded that last year, right? We
This
funded-
is the third year of
This is the
funding.
third year.
I will,
All right, so it was 200,000, right, originally? That's what the
no,
first
it was
year?
400 both, all 3
It
years.
was always 400?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I will say this, based on what I've seen from our RFPs, I am confident we'll be giving you some funding back.
Let me write that down.
I don't know how much, because I don't know which group, which, I don't know, we haven't picked somebody yet, but based on what I've seen, I just,
Well, that depends on how many modules we want to pick up too.
no, I looked at the quotes.
In all of the modules?
Yeah, I looked at all.
So you've just been the 400,000 setting that aside each year until you. Okay.
The other thing that we had discussed on courthouse security, we had looked at possibly doing that in a phase.
We did.
We did.
This is
We broke
second
it in-
phase.
This is the second
just
phase.
The second phase, okay.
We did one phase this year.
That's why it's at the top. We're halfway through with the job.
Yeah, that's, I couldn't, all right. All right, sounds good.
All right, so y'all are good with that?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Any board members have any comments, questions, concerns? I think we can adjourn then
All right.
for 7 o'clock. Thank you all.
Did you get my
Thank
email?
you.
I sent it earlier.
You take it back in. Well, it's got quite a bit of juice.
I said you guys were right. I said staff was right, I was wrong.
I couldn't hear
I've
you.
heard that.